Welcome back to our webinar series for parents and caregivers, Before It Becomes More. I'm Corey Hammond from Partnership to End Addiction. In this video, we'll be talking about social media, technology, and access to drugs. Here's what we're going to cover. We will discuss the pros and cons of social media for teens and some of the mental health impacts. We will talk about why social media seems to be more detrimental to teens compared to adults. Then we will talk about social media and substance use, what substance-related content teens are seeing on social media, and how social media platforms can, unfortunately, be a way to access substances. Then we'll get into what families can do to keep their kids safe online, and I'll share some resources at the end. So let's get into it. First, I'll talk about social media in general. It probably comes as no surprise to you that most teens have access to a smartphone and most use social media. As of 2024, 95% of teens 13 to 17 years old have access to a smartphone. Screen time is up to an average of over 5 hours per day for teens, and 90% of teens say that they use social media every day. Many social media platforms have set a minimum age limit of 13 in order to comply with the law. So what platforms are they using? Though it's technically not a social media site, YouTube still reigns supreme, with 90% of teens saying that they use it. Next most popular is TikTok, then Instagram and Snapchat. Facebook and Twitter are less popular with teens these days. 19% of teen girls report almost constant use of TikTok, and 19% of teen boys report almost constant use of YouTube. So what do teens gain from social media? We know that peer acceptance is a protective factor. It's important for positive self-esteem during adolescence. And for all of the years before social media, peer acceptance used to be demonstrated in person. But now the metrics of peer acceptance have moved online. So the number of followers you have, the number of likes you got on your most recent post. There's a lot of things that teens gain from social media. They can stay connected to family members that may not live close. It's where their social life lives. Putting content about your lives online can get you instant acceptance and validation. You can find community with like-minded people. But also putting yourself online like that puts you at risk of instant pushback and vitriol and hate. And unfortunately, because teens' social lives live on social media these days, even events or gatherings that are going to happen in person most likely start online with planning over social media. So it's really become ingrained in teen social lives. But there's a lot of other benefits too. So social connectivity and belonging, areas of self-expression and identity exploration, strategic thinking and decision-making. There's so many educational opportunities on social media. You can build up your confidence and your voice, creativity and skill development, cultural awareness and empathy. Today's young people will rely on digital tools for almost every aspect of their lives. But it's a complex issue. About half of teens say that they know they spend too much time on social media and that it harms kids their age. But they also say that many of them are getting mental health info from social media that maybe they wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. Over half, are using social media in ways to display their creativity, and almost 3/4 are using social media for connection. So teens also name sleep, productivity, and mental health as harms, but acknowledge that it helps them to maintain their friendships. So there's pros and cons. We're never going to get rid of social media. So learning how to manage what young people are seeing and how they interact with the internet is what's really important. These are some of the ways that social media may impact youth mental health in a negative way. So social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, where they might find it difficult to focus, and certainly addiction. And so addiction here means a behavioral addiction. Social media can be addictive. And over half of teens say it would be very hard or somewhat hard to quit using social media. So here's a bit more about that social deprivation piece. Time spent online on social media is time not spent in person socializing, maintaining relationships, exercising, reading, pursuing hobbies, and spending time outside. And we know that all of these things are vital to our mental health and our ability to thrive. For the most part, if someone's beginning to struggle with their mental health, these are the things that they would be told to do to try to help themselves. Pursue hobbies, spend time outside, exercise, lean on your friendships. And unfortunately, social media gets in the way of many of these things. We know that it has an impact on mental health. From 2000 to 2019, the suicide rate for adolescents aged 10 to 19 rose 48%. Specifically for girls aged 10 to 14, it rose 131%. We know that loneliness and friendlessness surged in American teens starting in 2012. That is when young people's social lives increasingly moved online. For instance, that 2012 was the year that I got an Instagram. And so we can't blame social media entirely for this. We know that many other things in the world started to change around 2012. Social media certainly plays a role, but there's other factors that play into it as well. But we can't deny the relationship between screen time and mental health. Teens who spend more than 5 hours per day on social media were 60% more likely to express suicidal thoughts or harm themselves. In the young adult population, those who use social media for more than 2 hours per day had double the odds of being socially isolated compared to those who use social media for less than 30 minutes per day. So it's not just being on social media that matters. As many of you know, I'm sure, it's the amount that you're on it that matters. As screen time increases, the likelihood that a teen has had mental health problems increases. 42% of adolescents with 5 or more hours of screen time said that they had poor or very poor mental health. Only 24% of adolescents with 2 hours of screen time said the same. But what's also interesting is that the association between screen time and poor mental health is significantly reduced for teens who have high levels of self-control and a strong relationship with caregivers who supervise them. So even if teens have a ton of screen time, they're not going to be super negatively affected if they have high levels of self-control and if they have a good relationship with their parents who monitor and are watching what they're doing. So we often talk about social media as being especially harmful to teens compared to adults. Why is that? And this isn't to say that there's no harms to social media for adults. There certainly are, and I'm sure many of us can attest to that. But the effects are more pronounced in teens. So let's explore why. It starts with brain development. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment, impulse control, long-term thinking, all of that's still under construction in teenagers and young adults. Meanwhile, the amygdala, or the emotional hub of the brain, is in overdrive, searching for new and meaningful experiences. So this combination of heightened emotions and underdeveloped regulation skills makes risk-taking behaviors, especially the instant gratifying ones like gambling or substance use, far more appealing. And so in part, this explains why teenagers are more at risk of developing an issue to addictive substances and things like social media compared to adults. Human brains are for the most part fully developed in those areas, not until we reach our late 20s. And so teens are still learning how to delay gratification, making them much more vulnerable to compulsive tech use and other behaviors that grant instant gratification, like substance use. And so for the question that we often get of what the minimum age for allowing social media should be, there's an expert named Dr. Lisa D'Amour who often says not before 14 or 15 for sure, preferably later, because that's when kids develop a better ability to know what is real and what's not real, and they can be more discerning about what's being posted as an ad or a marketing ploy or self-promotion. We want young people to be able to think critically about what they're seeing online and not just believe everything that they read. And that's hard for someone who's 11 or 12. It's even hard for adults. And so we want to wait until that brain is a little bit more developed and that young person is mature enough to navigate the wild west of internet safety. There's also characteristics of social media platforms that play into teens' proclivity for more risky behaviors, like being able to make anonymous accounts. So anonymous identities where teens can create anonymous accounts really reduces their accountability and can facilitate risky behavior. There's also limited oversight online. Social media platforms don't consistently moderate content just due to how much is out there, which can allow interactions like bullying and drug sales to slip through, unfortunately. There's also this idea of profit over protection. These social media companies are gigantic industries. They're not incentivized to care about the health and safety of teenagers. Their goal is to make as much money as possible, and that means prioritizing growth and engagement on their platforms, even if it may mean harm to young people. These products are designed to encourage compulsive, frequent, prolonged use. And so to do that, these platforms are designed to be very compulsive, using features like endless scrolling and push notifications and algorithmic content that's emotionally engaging or provocative. And so young people are targeted as future lifetime users. It makes them a key demographic for marketing and product design. They're not just current users, they want the lifetime customer that a teen represents. Even if that means exposing them to harmful or addictive content to get them hooked. And also selling data, like what you like to watch and what your interests are, is big business for these companies. We saw this come to a head recently with social media platforms being found negligent about teen mental health. And so this lawsuit in particular opens the door for similar cases to find social media platforms liable for their addictive nature and the mental health effects on young people. So how does all of this relate to substance use? Content about substances on social media is very common. It normalizes and often glamorizes substance use. Over 76% of all substance-related content on social media platforms was positive. So a much smaller percentage of content is showing the harms or the dangers of drugs. And this matters because it distorts our perception of risk. Repeated exposure to positive content about drugs inflates our perception of how common and acceptable drug use is. And young people will internalize that. Adolescents who use social media more were more likely to have pro-cannabis attitudes compared to those with less social media usage. So basically, there's a lot of content about addictive substances on the internet, and the majority of it is not portraying substances as dangerous or something to be avoided. And that can be really influential to a teen who's trying to make decisions about whether or not to try something and whether or not something might be safe. Research shows there's a strong association between social media use and risky behaviors, including substance use and sexual behavior. I'll talk more about that in a moment. If you've seen our video on the new landscape of nicotine products, this slide will look familiar. But it's important to know that this positive content and that exists online and what it looks like. So some of it looks like product reviews, discussing or ranking flavors, or fun-looking challenges. These videos have hundreds of thousands of views. It's good advertising for the tobacco companies and rarely shows downsides or harms. This type of content is not supposed to be shown to people who are underage, but that's rarely followed or enforced. And unfortunately, social media can be a source for buying substances. Apps that are encrypted, so things like Signal, WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, or apps where the messages disappear, like Snapchat or Instagram vanish mode, can be a way for young people to buy and sell substances. There's new marketplaces like TikTok Shop, And teens can get around app rules by using emojis and ever-evolving slang. We're never going to be able to keep up with it. And so we want to have conversations with teens about how buying, selling, or using substances offered or sold online is both illegal and dangerous. And though it's illegal to buy prescription pills or any substance online, and apps like Snapchat say that they prohibit drug-related terms, people are always going to be able to find a way around those rules. As you can see in the picture on the right, you can get around rules by rules around search terms by switching around letters or using numbers in place of some letters. When it comes to social media and substance use, research shows that the earlier young people are exposed to substance-related content on social media, the more likely they are to use substances as teens. Problematic social media use is associated with substance use in middle school, and the more frequent a teen's social media use is, the more likely they are to use substances. Research also shows that early onset rapid increase in social media use is associated with the highest risk of experimenting with marijuana as a teen. So the age at which they start and how much social media they're using matters. The bottom line here is that social media use and substances seem to go together for teens. Teens who use a lot of social media are more likely to be the same teens that are using tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs. And it goes the other way too. Teens who use substances are more likely the teens who have problematic social media use. So these two issues go hand in hand. As parents, it's really important to understand this relationship. It's important for us to remember this, and this idea about age matters so much, because the younger kids are when they start using social media, the younger they will start to see pro-substance use content. And we know that age matters when it comes to substance use, because the earlier someone starts using or trying substances, the greater their chance for developing addiction as they grow up. For someone who first uses addictive substances before age 18, they have a 1 in 4 chance of going on to develop addiction. Whereas someone who waits until age 21, that rate drops down to 1 in 25, just a 4% chance of developing addiction. So what can families do? We want adults to model best practices around social media. Kids watch what you do more than they watch what you say. So that means maybe thinking critically about our own social media use, as difficult as that might be. So we want to balance our own social media use. We want to prioritize face-to-face interactions or phone calls over text message and social media. Try to avoid using devices during family time. You can create regular tech-free areas or tech-free times. We can demonstrate how to be safe and respectful online, and you can develop a family media agreement if it might be helpful for your family. So we want to monitor and manage phone use for teens. So we want to continue setting healthy expectations around social media use. So consider allowing smartphone use when your child has the emotional maturity to handle it. Experts again say 14 to 15 at least. You will always know your child best, and you have the best understanding of their emotional maturity. They might be able to take care of a cell phone or avoid racking up fees on in-app purchases, maybe without guidance from you. Or you might need to give them a little more structure to set them up for success. So you can start with an open conversation about the pros and cons of smartphones. You can collaboratively establish boundaries that reflect their age and maturity, explain to them how to protect their personal data, and that includes teaching online safety and setting rules about interactions with strangers. Set boundaries for excessive screen time, and do not allow phones to be kept in bedrooms overnight. We want to monitor phone use thoughtfully through joint phone checks, and if you use parental controls, explain their purpose to maintain trust. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, in his latest book, he says that there's 4 norms that we really want to drive home and see widely adopted when it comes to phones. He says no smartphones before high school, no social media before age 16, no phones in schools, and more independent free play, especially outside. So you can pick and choose from those and figure out what might work the best for your family. We also want to be specific in how you monitor and manage social media, not just the phone use in general. So you can determine if they're ready for social media by observing how they manage texting with their friends. So if they prove responsible, ask which social media platform is most important for staying on top of their social group's planning and interactions, and start with that one platform. Maybe all of their friends talk on Instagram, and that's where plans are made, and that's where everyone is. So maybe you just start with Instagram and you only add others as they prove that they're responsible and if it's needed. You can engage in ongoing discussions about how to use social media in safe and helpful ways. Monitor the social media postings and content viewed based on their algorithms. Not everyone understands how algorithms work, especially younger kids. They might assume that everyone is seeing similar things and not realizing that their For You page is different depending on what they interact with. Use screen time settings to help children set limits and learn self-control. Limit exposure to adult content wherever possible. And guidelines around social media use should evolve as kids get older. If your child's under 18, actively follow them on social media and interact with them on these platforms. That'll help you stay informed about their online activities and building trust while understanding the app and all of the risks involved. But effective monitoring is not 24/7 surveillance. Monitoring involves open communication and building trust, and guiding kids towards responsible decision making. So maybe that means knowing where they're going to be, whom they're going to be with, and when they're going to be home. Surveillance crosses the line from healthy engagement into over control, which can harm the trust that you have with your child and harm the relationship. So that would be things like eavesdropping on private conversations without them knowing, being overly involved in non-dangerous text or social media exchanges, installing cameras everywhere, not allowing for any privacy, and restricting all of the choices that they make. So using tools and strategies, we want to emphasize health and safety, not control or trying to spy on our children. Surveillance or really intense helicopter parenting can push your child away and encourage them to hide things from you. We don't advocate for the apps that let you hack into your child's phone or see their location without them knowing. When it comes to having conversations with young people, there's many different ways that these conversations can go. And so these are some examples of how conversations about sensitive topics could start out. And the resulting conversation is different on what they say back. Beforehand, you could brainstorm how you would steer the conversation in each of these cases. Let's say the topic is buying pills on Snapchat or something similar, and you use this presentation as a way to bring this up in conversation. So you could say, I just watched a video about buying pills on Snapchat, and I wanted to ask what you know about it. If your teen knows nothing about the topic, maybe it's a good idea to explain what it is and remind them that you're always here for them if they have questions or want to talk about anything further. Maybe they're familiar but not super concerned. Maybe you check and make sure that what they know about these topics is accurate. Ask them what they think about it. And again, remind them that you're always there for them, and what to do and who they could go to in certain situations if they arise. And maybe you're talking about a sensitive topic and your teen says, yeah, I know all about that. That happened to a friend of mine. Check in about the situation, ask what happened, maybe ask how it could be handled differently in the future. You can also inquire if their friend might need more support and if there were any other adults who were alerted. The main idea is that safety is always the top priority. We're never going to be able to shield children from bad things on the internet forever. But if kids know that they can come to us in any situation and be met with support and without judgment, then you can help them through any difficult situation they might find themselves in. Kids need to know that if something feels wrong, if they're uncomfortable with someone's behavior on the internet, someone is cyberbullying them, they're worried about a stranger, a friend is about to do something risky, they found someone they know selling pills on Snapchat, anything, they can and should always come to you for help. Many of the things parents are concerned about can be avoided before things progress to a dangerous point if a young person has an adult that they can talk to and trust and not be shamed. Fostering this trust and openness is one of the most important things caregivers can do to keep their children safe online. So here's some resources on this topic. The first is healthychildren.org, which is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. This has some examples of how to talk to teens about social media. So they have social media algorithms, how to set boundaries, if you're gaming too much, how to reflect on friends' social media use, a lot of great stuff on their website. If you think that making a family media plan might be helpful for your family, the American Academy of Pediatrics has templates for that. The plans encourages parents to be involved in their teens' digital lives while promoting responsibility and respect for limits and trust. The Center for Parent and Teen Communication has a lot of great resources and articles on strengthening family connections and improving communication between caregivers and teens. They have great information about monitoring, setting boundaries, and other discipline questions that parents might have. If there's a movie or an app or a piece of media that you want to know if it's appropriate for your kids, Common Sense Media is a great place for that information. They also have information on how to talk about safety online and digital citizenship for kids. As always, Partnership to End Addiction has parent support. Obviously, most of it is around substance use and preventing substance use, but a lot of it can be about just having tough conversations as a parent and caregiver. So it's free, confidential guidance for parents. You can get one-on-one support via text, email, or phone. We have coaching and community groups and expert resources on both prevention and intervention. You can use the QR code here to get directly to our website, drugfree.org. YSS is your local trusted hub for mental health and wellness education. YSS offers mental health care for adults and youth, including suicide prevention and awareness training. You can visit yss.org for more information and resources. And again, Before It Becomes More through YSS is your local resource for more information on this topic and other related topics. Before It Becomes More is the statewide opioid prevention and awareness campaign. If you're watching this video, that likely means that you've already explored some of the resources on the website, but if you haven't, we encourage you to go to yss.org/beforeitbecomesmore for more information and more resources. From the teams at YSS and Partnership to End Addiction, thank you so much for watching this webinar.